Hi, I'm Scott Garibay. Every single word you're going to hear in this video is my humble opinion. When I'm done talking, you have an opportunity to respond with your humble opinion in the comments below, or with the very channel you're using to watch this YouTube video. With your YouTube account, you can just upload a video in response. All right. Did Matthew Mercer use Dungeons and Dragons to warn American Dungeon Masters and American Dungeons and Dragons players of imminent war? Yes, he did. All right, when did he do it and how did he do it? I'm going to tell you right now. All right, he did it with Matthew Mercer of Critical Role, the best dungeon master in the world, king of Critical Role. The reason Critical Role is successful. He did it with his greatest achievement. What's Matthew Mercer's greatest achievement? Exandria, the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, is Matthew Mercer's greatest achievement. Why is Explorer's Guide to Wildemount Matthew Mercer's greatest achievement? Well, he did something that's only been done twice in the entirety of. He did something that has only been done twice in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. He is only the second non D&D owning employer, right? So three companies have owned Dungeons and Dragons: TSR, Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro. Okay, and only twice in the history of Dungeons and Dragons has an official canon Dungeons and Dragons setting been created by an employee been created by someone who is not the employee of the Dungeons and Dragons owner. The first time it happened was in 3rd edition when Keith Baker won a contest, which I entered, and won the contest to create a new Dungeons and Dragons setting, and he created Eberron. Matthew Mercer was the second one. He created Exandria. Wildemount is a region on Exandria. Exandria is the world that Matthew Mercer is the D&D canon world that Matthew Mercer created. It's called Exandria. It contains Wildemount. It contains Zorhas. It contains the Menagerie Coast. Wildemount is ruled by the Dwendalian Empire. Zorhas is ruled by the Kryn dynasty, and the Menagerie Coast is ruled by the Clovid Concord. Yeah, the Clovis Concord, right? And basically, when Matthew Mercer created Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, he established a new canon Dungeons and Dragons setting, Exandria. And guess what he did? He made sure everybody knew Exandria is at war. The Dwendalian Empire is warring against the Kryn dynasty, and he gave explicit instructions to American dungeon masters and explicit instructions to American players on how to place their player characters into a wartime setting, unlike any other Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition setting. Exandria is the only official Dungeons and Dragons canon setting that is established, introduced in vehement, aggressive war, invasion, the whole nine, right? And the Clovis Concord, the Menagerie Coast, is supplying weapons and provisioning primarily Zorhas, right? Fascinating, right? So Matthew Mercer made Dwendalian Empire a very aggressive, dangerous, conservative force, pretty much modeling Putin, right? And Zorhas is a monster realm, right, with just amazing, bold, incredible heroes, right, who are then provisioned and aided militarily by a incredibly wealthy source, right, literally to the east, right, who provisions the Zorhas to fight against this aggressive, dangerous, conservative force. So if you look at it, Exandria, if you look, and you don't have to squint, I mean, it's clear as day, right? Xhorhas looks just like, look like a parallel of the heroes fighting in Ukraine now, right? The Clovis Concord really looks like a lot like America, right? And the Vandalia looks pretty much identical to Vladimir Putin's aggressive, invading nation. It's all right there, right? Now you're like, wait a second, Scott. Matthew Mercer he's not a crystal ball reader. How could he have known? Tell you how he knows. I'll tell you how he knew, right? He knew because all this happened in 2014, and just pretty much, and like in 2014, Putin just shouted to the world, I am going to invade Europe. I 100% am going to invade Europe. He shouted it to the world. How did he do it? Listen to this. He invaded Crimea with unmarked troops, took over Crimea, lied about it for 6 months and said, and President Obama said, hey, Putin, did you just invade Crimea? And he said, of course not, President Obama. I would never. And then 6 months later, he goes, ha, gotcha. I invaded Crimea. Those were Russian troops. And literally twirled his mustache. Right? You're like, so you gonna invade Europe next? Yes. Right? So and it was clear to anybody who was watching and anybody who had a powerful brain in their head. And guess what? Matthew Mercer got a powerful brain in his head, right? So Matthew Mercer was, and listen, look at the timing. 2014, all this goes down. By 2015, it's all known, right? At that point, Matthew Mercer is building Exandria. And when it came time in 2018, 2019, for him to begin writing his Exandria book that, listen to this, would drop in March 2020, when the world cracked in half with the March 2020 problem, right? He was giving a book that was warning American dungeon masters and American players of an imminent war that would come, and using Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion, to prepare American dungeon masters and prepare American Dungeons and Dragons players to play in wartime, which is exactly what we're doing right now. Okay? Now, here's the big question. Did Mercer do this consciously? Absolutely not. He did it subconsciously, in my humble opinion. So basically, Mercer's Hollywood, right? Like he has an entire playbook of rules he has to follow because of that. And so he's not allowed to talk about a whole bunch of different things, and he can't really directly interact with a whole additional number of things, right? So this was all just there subconsciously, and it was in his mind and in his heart because he knew this invasion was coming. Anyone who watched the news carefully knew this was coming. And we know that Matthew Mercer does watch the news carefully, and the reason why is he's woke. It's not possible to be woke today without being a news wonk. All woke people are news wonks, and Matthew Mercer is a news wonk. He knows what's happening on the front lines of culture, and in order to know what's happening on the front lines and project proper wokeness, you have to be dialed in on news. So that's what I'm saying. 100% yes, Matthew Mercer absolutely used Dungeons and Dragons by creating a canon setting, Exandria, and making that canon setting from the beginning 100% war-bound, and started with a war and continuing with war, right? Exandria is a wartime setting, specifically to make American dungeon masters and make American Dungeons and Dragons players ready for the war that would come for them, which Mercer knew was coming for them, because anyone who watched what happened with Vladimir Putin in 2014 knew that America would be at war with Vladimir Putin very soon. Oh, and you're like, oh, Scott, we're not at war with Vladimir Putin. Go tell that to U.S. government, Massachusetts Democrat congressman who literally just said, Seth Moulton, who literally just said, we are at war, America. Okay? Tell that to a U.S. congressman who definitely believes and publicly stated that we're at war. Go tell that to him, right? So I definitely think Matthew Mercer used Exandria to warn American Dungeon Masters and American Dungeon players about imminent war and to prepare them for imminent war, but he did it subconsciously. That's my opinion. What's yours? Let's see it below. Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.